Hello there. Welcome back. This is Julius. Today I want us to look at some concept on macros and VBA. Perhaps you've heard about macros, you've heard about VBA, and do you want to get some information regarding this? Now, what is macros? What is macros? First of all, in Microsoft Excel, we have spreadsheets being the playground for each and every activity that you do. We often encounter some repetitive tasks, some demands of certain tasks that are very, very much repetitive that we really need to get on some automation for them. These are the tasks that may seem to crop up again and again, capturing our attention with some relentless persistence. But in the face of technological progress, we need not to keep struggling doing some repetitive tasks again and again. If you are a pro in Microsoft Excel, then that is not the direction that you would take. We then make the assuming but yet powerful macro tool. So if you think about macros as Excel's covert operatives for automation, this would work quietly in the background to spare you from the laborious duty of manually carrying out repetitive tasks. With the mastery of Excel, macros, and VBA, you are able to run this process one time where it would really consume probably some little bit of your time, but it's worth taking 5 minutes of your time today and take some seconds tomorrow. Over here, you notice that I have some data, and this is actually a sales data, and I have my data for week 1 and for week 2. Making an assumption, ladies and gentlemen, that anytime you receive this data, the tasks that you normally want to perform on this data are just one and the same, and this data probably comes from the same source. So that means that you can basically automate these tasks so that the next time you come in, you need not to start doing these processes again and again. Now, what is macros? Macro is considered as some set of programming instructions that can be recorded, right? It can be named, it can be saved and executed in VBA, as when required macros can help us to automate repetitive tasks associated with data manipulation. Just like I was telling you, suppose that every week I receive this report. And when I receive this report on a weekly basis, I need to do some cleaning on this report before it is finally taken in for analysis. So whenever I receive this report, there is a way in which my boss requires me to present this report. I'm going to take you through a step-by-step on how to run VBA till the end. So first, let's get into the into running macros, or how to create macros. You have your Microsoft Excel. There are two ways in which you can create macros. Over here, if you check from your tabs, over here you have the option for view. If you click on view, to the right, you have the option for macros. Once you click on this, you have the option for view macros, record macros, and use relative references. I'm going to show you this first trick, but I'm also going to show you another way that you can be able to record your macro and also easily work and operate with your macros in your Excel workbook. Over here, view macros, you will use this option once you have recorded macro and therefore you want to get a list, or you want to see all the macros that you have recorded. Record macro is when you want to record a new macro. Then over here we have the option to use relative references. For those who are familiar with types of cell referencing in Excel, we have got two major types of cell referencing. That is the relative reference and the absolute reference. When you choose the option to use relative references, then this means that your macro is going to be adjusted based on the position of the active cell when you start running your macro. This makes your activity more adaptable to different situations. What do I mean by this? Assume, for instance, you are creating your macro. While creating your macro, you're going to start from this first column here, where I've just placed my cursor. That means that probably your macro would only pick up for this particular column. So it means next time when you're going to run your macro, then your macro will not pick up in your entire workbook, but only this specific column. I will give you an example. Let's move over back to our view tab, macros, and now we want to record macros. So click on the option record macros. Over here you have some this dialog box that requires you to key in some set of instructions before you proceed. Notice that number one, you are required to assign a macro name. Macro names are important for they help you to remember what you have done. So I'm going to assign my macro name. Suppose you have got different macros, then how are you going to know that this is the specific macro that you're supposed to run? Simply by checking on your macro name. So I'm going to give my macro a name, and I'm going to call this macro sales data cleaning. But I want you to notice something. When assigning macro names, you are not allowed to use spaces in between, but instead the underscore can be used to replace the space. That is one of the rules that are to be followed when assigning macro names. So if I want to call this sales data cleaning, I'm going to use this underscore to denote the space or to replace the space. Over here, I can assign a shortcut key to my macro, and I'm going to assign it a shortcut key Control Shift J. I'm going to assign it a shortcut key Control Shift J. I would discourage you when assigning macro names in using Control and a letter or using Shift and a letter, because almost all keys on your in Excel have been assigned shortcuts starting with Control. Therefore, you need to know that anytime you assign a macro keyboard shortcut, then that shortcut is going to override the existing keyboard shortcut on your in your PC. For instance, if you are going to use Control C here, we all know Control C is used to copy. So it means that the moment you assign your macro Control C, it's going to override the Control C used for copy, and the next time you use the keyboard shortcut Control C, it is no longer going to run the command for copy, but rather run your macro. So I'm going to give it Control Shift and J. So that would be my keyboard shortcut for this specific macro. Store macro in, I'm going to leave it by default where it is. Then we have the description. The description gives more information about your macro. So if you can give the description, if you want to give the description about your macro, you can give the description. And then once you are done, you click OK. Notice that now any activity that you are going to perform, that will be reflected in the next activity that you're going to perform, because your macro is already recording at the background. Over here, if you come to your view tab, you come over to macros, then you have the option to stop recording. That basically means that something is working at the background. So what I'm going to do here, I want now to perform data cleaning activities that I will always do to this my specific data set. So first of all, allow me to enlarge these columns so that they auto-fit. Well, now I have the first column here that is basically reflecting my titles. So the first activity that I do first is to ensure that I first of all specify that this first column here, or the first row, sorry, is basically denoting titles. So I'm going to give it some formatting that is going to make it look like a title row. So I will select the entire row, Control Shift, then the arrow pointing to the right. Then I want to perform some formatting here. So I'll move over to my home tab, and I want to make it bold. I want to make it italics. I want to give it maybe that highlight. I want to give it the yellow highlight. Then I also want to underline it. Just an example. So that is, for instance, one of the activities that I want to do with my first row here. So over here, if you check onto my first row, you notice that I now have these activities that were not there. So from here, I can now proceed now to do further analysis or further cleaning to my entire data. Now, over here, I have my first name, second name, last name. I have the department for this particular individual. Of course, the first one is the employee ID, the hire date, the office from where they work, the state. I have the base salary, bonus, commission paid to them, their personal days on which they work, the sick days, right? And then I have the evaluation score. I also have the evaluation score. Now, assuming that anytime my boss gets this data, My boss wants me to do some activities, and one of the activities that my boss wants me to do is to ensure that I calculate the total pay. So over here, I have the base salary, I have the bonus, and I have the commission, making an assumption that the total pay of this individual is going to be the base salary plus the bonus plus the commission. That means that I need to get the total pay for this individual before I present this report to my boss. So I'm just gonna add a new column beside here by simply Control Shift plus. Then I'm gonna call this column total pay. Total pay. So how do I get the total pay? I get the total pay by taking my base salary, I add to my bonus plus my commission. So I'm gonna say this equal to the sum. This is equal to the sum of the base salary and the bonus plus the commission. Once I'm done this, I'm just going to easily autofill that. So over here now, I have my total pay. I have the total pay for my employees. So once I have this, once again, I have the personal days, the sick days, and then the evaluation score. So assume here, once again, my boss wants me to clearly highlight those individuals with an evaluation score of 4 and above. That means those individuals that have an evaluation score of greater than 4. So that's what I'm going to do next. I want to give some conditional formatting to individuals that have an evaluation score of greater than 4. So I'm just going to highlight again my evaluation score, my evaluation scores for all the employees. Over here, we'll move on to my home tab. I move on to conditional formatting. Then over here, I have highlight sales rules. Then I'm going to say sales greater than. Then I've said we want to highlight those individuals that have an evaluation score of 4. That means those individuals who performed well, they are in a scale of what? They are in a scale of 4. So if I use 4, that is not going to pick up 4 because 4 is not greater than, 4 leaves out the bracket of 4. So I want to make sure that I pick up 4. So I'm going to choose on 3 so that now everything reflects on 4 and 5. Everything reflects on 4 and 5. Then over here, how do I want to highlight them? Say for instance, I want to highlight them in green. So if I click on this drop down here, I don't have maybe the right green that I want to use. So I'm going to move on to custom format. Then over here, I have the fill. Then from the fill colors here, I want to use this green. So this is what I'm going to select. Then I say, okay. Once I'm done, I'm just going to click OK. So everything has been clearly highlighted. Those individuals with an evaluation score of 4 and 5. Over here, I have the first name, second name, and last name. My boss is not interested in this. He's only interested in seeing a single name for all these particular individuals. So what I'm going to do is to make sure that I merge the first name, second name, and last name. Over here, once again, I'm going to insert another column. Then I'm going to call this full name. So how I'm going to create the full name is that I'm going to use the concatenate function to merge my first name, second name, and last name. So I will say over here equals concatenate, this function over here. And then text 1, which text do I want to join? I want to join the first name. Comma. Then I need a space in between first name, second name, and last name. So I'm going to join first name and a space in between. So I'm going to put the opening space tab, I close, comma. Then I have text 3 is going to be second name, comma. After the second name, once again, I need a space, comma. Then I have the last name. So that's all that I want to do. Then I'm going to execute that. So once I'm done, I simply autofill. So that clearly merges my first name, second name, and last name. Well, now, assume for instance, I'm not interested now with all this other information because my boss is not interested in the first name, second name, and last name. They only need the full name. Before I delete this information, notice that if I click on this, it makes reference to these other cells. So deleting this information means that this my cell would give me a hash reference error. So just to stop that, I want to format this full name so that they don't pick or they don't make reference to my previous cells. So they're going to stand alone as values. So I'm going to highlight all of them. I Control C to copy. Then what I will do is to paste them as values. So I'm going to come here to paste. Then I paste as values. All right, so now if I come over here, if I come over to this, then you notice that now it's not reading in with reference to this, but it's only keep it this mass or. So from here, I'm gonna delete all these other columns. So I just select all of them and then control minus to delete that, control minus to delete that. Well, assume for instance again, my boss is not interested probably with the state from where this particular individual comes from. My boss is not interested from the state from where this individual comes from. So I'm also going to remove the state column. I'm also going to remove the state column. Then now my information. This is the report that my boss is interested in. So notice here that we have calculated the total pay. We have also been able to merge the first name, second name, and last name to form a single full name. So if this is what the boss is interested in, then well, this is what we are going to present. Now, once you are done performing all these activities, then it is now time to stop recording your macro. Over here, if you come to the View tab, now you move on to macros, you have the option Stop Recording. So I'm going to click on the option Stop Recording. Great! I have just recorded my first macro. Assume now, this is data cleaning process that I have performed for this one exercise. Come week 2, my data has come for week 2. Notice that week 2 data follows the same format on which my original data from week 1 was in. But I want it to be in the format in which I have made the other data. What I'm going to do here, ladies and gentlemen, because I ran my macro, I'm just going to run my macro, then that will automatically format my data set that I have here. There are different ways in which you can run your macro. The first way to run your macro is by use of a keyboard shortcut. The second way to run your macro is by clicking on a shape. The third option is by clicking on a button, and also from the Excel ribbon. So I'm going to show you different ways to run this macro. And just before we run this macro, I want to create another copy of this so that I'm able to show you 2 ways of creating this macro. So I'm just going to come here, right click on this, and I'm going to say move or copy. Then I want to move it to the end. I'm going to make sure I create a copy of this, and I click OK. Right, so I have week 2. So allow me rename this as week 3. I'm going to rename this week 3. All right, now I'm in week 2. Remember, the first way to run a macro is by use of keyboard shortcut. Notice that we assigned our macro a keyboard shortcut Control-Shift-J. So over here, I'm not going to struggle doing all the processes that I did in my previous exercise. But what I'm going to do here is basically to run my keyboard shortcut. So from my keyboard, I'm going to hold on Control-Shift-J. Congratulations! You just learned the first step of running your macro. And now notice that your week 2 data is also formatted in the same format as your week 1. Notice you didn't have to go through all the processes of getting to do everything that we did in week 1. That is the power of macros. So once this is done, then you can easily share this report now to your boss. The good thing with learning macro is that you spend little time doing very heavy tasks. That is why I told you at the beginning that it is better to spend some time. It could be stressful to spend some time at the beginning to record this, but it will save you a little more time in the future. Over here, if I move to week 3, now assume I have my week 3 data is in, and I want to do the same thing. In week 2, I show you how to run your macro using keyboard shortcut. Let me show you yet another way to run your macro. If you forget about your keyboard shortcut, don't worry about that. Everything is well. Just move over to your View tab. Then from the View tab, move over to Macros. Then over here, you have the option View Macros. So click on View Macros. Once you click on View Macros, you will be able to see a list of all your macros here. Over here, you have got the personal sales data cleaning macro, which is actually the macro that we want to run. But did you know that you can also edit your macro? Suppose, for example, if you come over here to week 2, maybe something has changed and you no longer want something to be as it is. Say, for instance, if you come over here to your title, you don't want to underline your title. So you only want it to be in yellow, bold, and italic, and you don't want to underline it. So you need to do some editing. So how do you edit your macro? Just move over back again to your view tab, over here to macros, then view macro. Over here, you select the macro. Of course, from this list, you will see a list of all your macros that you have run. Over here, you have the option to run and to edit. I'm going to show you the role of run later, but for now, let's move over to edit. So we want to make some corrections to our macro. It tells you cannot edit a macro on a hidden workbook and hide the workbook using the unhide command. All right, worry not about that. What you need to do is just to move over to your view tab. Over here, you have the option unhide. So just click over here, unhide. Just click OK. It opens a new Excel workbook. Don't worry about that. Just move back to your workbook with macros. Then once you are done, move back to your view tab. Over here, you have the option for macros, view macros. Then now you can say edit. So this opens what we call the VBA. VBA in full means Visual Basic for Applications. And the Visual Basic for Applications, this is part of Microsoft's legacy software called the Visual Basic, and it is basically built to help write programs for the Windows operating system. This may look strange to you because it is somewhat more of a coding language, but don't worry about this, it's not something so complicated. Over here, once you move on to your VBA, then you are able to see a list of all processes that you applied to your macro. Over here, this is your macro name, sales data cleaning macro. And here, you can be able to see the keyboard shortcut that you assigned to your macro was Control-Shift-J. The first thing that you did over here, all these are activities that you did, and over here you can see bold true, italics true, or selection.font.italic true. This basically means that the first thing that you did was to make your selection. You made this selection of A1 through A7. Then once you're done, you are able to make all those values bold. You made them italics. You gave it some particular shade. You are also able to do what? You are also able to scroll down, and then of course you did away with some rows and all that. You created this row, total pay. So you are able to actually see a list of all the processes or a list of all the steps that you applied here. You are able to see a list of all the steps. You are able to see a list of all the steps that you applied in this particular list here. So assume now, for example, we don't want these italics. We made our title to be in italics, but we no longer want it to be in italics. So what I'm going to do here is just to make sure that I undo these italics. So where I have selection.font.italic true, I'm just going to change this true to false. I'm going to change this true over here to false. So that means that the next time I have just edited my macro. So the next time I run my macro, my title is not going to be italics. Let's see how that works. So once you're done, just close this small window over here. Then this brings us back. So let's move over again to our view tab, move over to macros, view macros. Then here, you're now going to click on the option run. So this is the second way of running your macro. The first way to run your macro was by use of a keyboard shortcut which we assigned Control-Shift-J. But now we are using this other option, so just click on run. Great. Once you click on run, you notice that your macro is already executed, but there's some editing that we did. We changed the we changed the italics thing, and therefore right now we don't have our title in italics. So if you're gonna compare your week 2 editing and your week 3 editing, you notice that here we have no italics. That is how you edit any mistakes that you might make in your macro or any changes that you want to have in your macro. And congratulations, that is the very first step in learning macros. Now, I'm going to show you yet another way in which you can be able to work with macros in a very, very easy format. Here, you need to make sure that you have Microsoft Developer tab here over in your Excel tabs. So I'm going to show you how to bring in the Developer tab that will enable you to easily work up with macros. To bring in the Developer tab, it means that you need to adjust your tabs To do that, move over here to File, move to File, then from File, move to Options, then over here, Customize Ribbon. Then to the right, you have the option Developer. So I'm going to click on this Developer. I'm going to check on the Developer. Then I say OK. Great. Over here now, I have my Developer tab. And when I click on my Developer tab, you notice that the Developer tab gives me the options to really work with my macros very, very much easily. And the first group here is the code group. Over here, I have the Visual Basic, which will actually open your VBA editor. I have my macros, so if you want to view a list of all your active macros, if you want to record a macro and also use a relative reference, I find using the developer tab much easier as compared to using your view tab. So next time, if you want to easily run macros, instead of moving over to your view tab, moving over to macros, just move over to your developer tab, move to your code group. Then if you want to record a macro, you'll come to the option record macros. Over here, from macros, you can be able to view a list of all your macros. I told you that there are different ways of running your macros. And the other way that you could run your macro is by clicking on a shape. Over here, if you want to use a shape, then you're just going to move over to your Insert tab. Where you have illustrations, click on Illustrations, Shapes, then choose on any shape that you're going to use to run your macro. If, for instance, I choose on this oval shape, I'm going to click on the oval. Then over here, my cursor has changed its sign. So I'm going to click anywhere that I want to place that my oval shape. Say, for instance, I want to put it here. Once I put it here, you can make adjustments to this shape as you want. You can make adjustments to this shape as you want. Maybe if you want to change the color, you can just come over here to Shape Fill, then change the color to whatever thing that you need. Maybe if that is what you need, you can just place it like that. So to enable it to run your macro, you're just going to right click over here. You'll come and right click on your shape, then choose on the option Assign Macro. Over here, this opens a list of all your active macros. Once you are done, just click on your personal macro or the necessary macro that you want to assign to your button. Once you are done, click OK. Great. Your shape now will work as a macro shape. And the next time when you come in, instead of following all those other processes, what you need to do is basically come over here, click on your shape, and it will be able to run your macro. I'm not going to do that right now because I've already run my macro. Let's meet in the next video to learn more about macros. And that is it that I had for you today. I hope the information was useful. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.